All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Ink and Chat. Tonight, I am joined by Miss LaVon McMillan, and I am looking forward to sitting down, having this conversation. She is a mother of two children, lives in Philadelphia. She's an advocate for special needs and early intervention specialist from birth to 3 years old, and she is the founder of Advocate for Me LLC. Good evening, Miss LaVon. How are you?
Great evening, all is well. Glad to be here and excited about the journey that's going on with Levon and Advocate for Me.
Yes, as you should be, as you should be. And it's so good to be able to connect with another sister in the journey of authorship. This is one that's so important to all of us, making sure that we're sharing our stories with our babies. So I'm so thankful that you decided to join me this evening. So let's jump into it. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
So my book, What About Me? I'll hold it up so you guys can see it. And as a matter of fact, today is 3 years today that we launched the book.
Happy
Thank you.
anniversary.
So, right. So, as you shared, Sabrina shared, I work in early intervention, and so some of the things that I saw while I was out in the field, and also coming from the background of early childhood, I was like, I want to merge the two and be able to tell a child's story and their point of view. So in the story, pretty much everything you see here is from the character. And so working with children who recently get diagnosed around 2 or 3, between the ages of 2 and 3, I said, okay, I'm going to create a 2-year-old character who's going to be on the autism spectrum disorder, but nobody knows yet. So just like what I've seen in different facilities, like the staff, their response to the child when they're, stemming, or when they are not able to communicate and they're nonverbal. So I said, I'm gonna put this in a book, and then I want to tell how the child's reactions is, or their experience is dealing with that, and then give them a positive outlook of how it could actually look. Um, Once the child gets adjusted to the class, and once we have specialists come in to work with them. So that was my main goal, is just merging the two and being able to share the story. So when I say what about me, it could be the teacher who burnt out at the end of the day
Yes.
because she didn't know how to handle the child in the classroom. Or the what about me could be the mom, because she's trying to figure out, what's going on with her child, and this is first time in school. Or the what about me could be for the child, and he's just not adjusting in the classroom, and everyone's just trying to figure out how to make him comfortable in that environment.
And that is so powerful and such needed resource, because you think about a lot of people and parents and teachers and just the children that's going through this type of situation, and just being able to process. And so the title itself, what about me, especially like from a parent's perspective, if you have a child, whether it's one child or multiple children that you're trying to take care of, one may be on the spectrum, one may not be able to, and you're trying to balance and you're trying to juggle the two. It's like you're burnt out, because you're trying to make sure that you give all your children the attention that they need. And it's like, okay, so what resource do I have? Or who can I reach out to kind of help guide me through this process, to kind of give me a little sense of peace of mind at going through the process? Because I can't speak to it because I'm not there, but I can only imagine that it's a struggle at times, and you just want to know what you can do. So I love the title, What About Me? Because
Thank
it,
you.
it
Thank
speaks
you.
volumes to the situation, and trying to understand. So so you've already pretty much told me what has inspired the story. And
Well, it's two things. Yeah,
oh,
it was that, and also just with the families. I just wanted to be able to reach out to different families. One of my goals is to have different genres of special needs books, so that it can reach different communities and different disabilities. So
and
that's
that's
the goal.
great. And it's needed. A lot of times we think that we're reading a story, that it doesn't have to touch on these type of situations, but it really does, because it's so many families and households that's going through these situations, that if you can give them a little bit of inspiration by reading and just letting them know that they're not alone, it makes a big difference. So
Exactly.
this is awesome. It is really, really awesome that you're sharing this and giving the students, the parents, the teachers a resource to be able to help kind of process and understand what's going on, and knowing that they're not alone in this fight. So
Exactly.
yes. And then the age group for your book is, what's the age group?
So pre-K to the highest grade that I've read it to was third grade, and they actually, even with the questions that I asked at the end, they were able to engage. And then pre-K, I pretty much normally would read the story and then just bring like a coloring page from
Mhm.
the book. So I would say pre-K to third grade.
Okay. And that's actually a good range, because, especially when you can kind of, catch them when they're young, and,
Mm,
kind of help to mold them a little bit and get them through some of those challenges that they're having when they're young. You're hoping that, it'll help them as they grow and, get older, to be able to move forward and process some of those things and have those resources at their fingertips. So that is
exactly.
good. That is good. Now tell me a little bit more about your writing journey. When you're going through your writing process, do you have a nice spot that you like to sit in that helps you think and get through the process of writing, or any quirky snacks that you like to have, things like that?
So to be honest with you, before I did What About Me, I did a collaborative book with
Mhm.
Erica Gilchrist. So
Okay.
I pretty much mirror how she had me do the Women Thriving Fearlessly book. So that was just a chapter in the book, in the collaborative book. And the chapter in the book was called Advocate for Me. And then as you can see, it winded up birthing into a business. But so she pretty much had us jot down different things that she wanted us to talk about in the story. So that's what I do. I normally just take I still follow the procedure. I take a sticky note, write down the different points that I want to talk about in the story. And
Okay.
then with What About Me, what I did was the different points pretty much was, like I said, how the child is interacting with the classroom, how the staff is interacting with them, what's that relationship between the child and the mom when they're leaving and it's the first day of school and he's never been anywhere else. So just
Mhm.
those things I jotted down, and then I kind of turned it into a story. The character's name is David. And then I started, well, what would David do? What would he say? So that's how I did What About Me. Um, the other books that we actually have one coming out now. My son actually wrote that one. And with that, I let him write it. But I do
Mhm.
have one that I have coming out that's we're partnering together. 7 Steps for Advocating for Your Child, and
Okay.
that one is kind of like a journal for me because it talked about, like what I said. My son has a feeding tube and he was born premature,
Okay.
so it was pretty much was my journey. Like, what did I want to see as a parent who had to advocate for their child? Or what did I want to do when I first got that diagnosis? And, what was my response and how was my emotions and how I probably could have handled it better. So that one is more like a journal. But then just giving the parents different pointers of, what they could do in the process now that now that I've encountered. He's 14, he'll be 15 this year. So the last 15 years, I've been advocating for them. So just sharing those steps with them. So it depends on what the genre of the book is and who's the age level. Like I said, What About Me is for like younger children.
Mhm.
The next book that I'm doing, and the Women Thriving Fearlessly, was for adults. So depending on who the audience that I'm talking to as well. So I take all that kind of into effect.
Okay, that's good. And having a journal like resources is going to be helpful, especially I think your story in itself, because you're speaking from a place of experience, and it helps other parents. Just again, it's all about knowing that you're not alone, because sometimes you think that you're just, when you're in your moment, you think that you're the only person that's going through it, but it's
Hmm.
so many other people that's going through it. So by you sharing your story, whether it's in a children's book or adult book, it's going to reach some people and touch their lives to help them move forward, because now they know they're not alone in this process, and understanding that, we have to advocate for our children, because
Mm-hmm.
if we don't advocate for them, who else will? you know
Exactly.
so that is so important. So I'm kudos to you.
Oh,
I'm
thank you so
excited.
much.
I'm excited for you. Excited for you, because it's going to help some people. Truly, it's going to help some people. So now tell me a little bit more of why is diversity in books important to you?
That's very important to me. Personally for my life, and then personally like for everyone, because of the diversity with whether it's skin color or nationality or culture or disabilities. um that part is very important because that's how we live, that's how we interact with people. Everyone learns differently, everyone is different. I always say like everybody's fingerprint is not the same. So we're all human, yes, but
Yes.
we're all different in our own different ways with our different abilities. And so I believe diversity is a major key, with being able to teach others how to treat others, if I put it that way. Because
Yeah.
when you see people sometimes with we have people that see others with disabilities, they think that they can't do things, but I put no limits on my kids, and I put no limits on the kids that I'm working with personally. I'm always one to figure out what their challenge might be for them, and then we figure out what their strengths are, and then we build on their strengths to help them overcome their challenges. So I do that in every situation, and then making sure that as a collective, as a group, we're all helping and encouraging each other. So I'm buddying, putting kids together, buddying them up, whether they got have a disability or not. If you're the head of my class, or you're the top in line, or you know how to walk, and this baby over here not sure how to walk, I'm partner y'all up. So just
Yeah.
making sure, pretty much what we want our world to be like, helping
Yes.
others and encouraging others instead of just being negative. So diversity and is definitely a big piece for me.
That's good. And we have to speak to, um, you know, disability. We have to speak to that as well, because it's all about the part of trying to have inclusion in
Mhm.
stories. And we come in all shapes, forms, and fashions. So we want to make sure that we have that, so that kids also know that they're not alone in their fight. When they're reading the stories, they can be able to see someone that looks like them, not only
Mhm.
from a skin tone perspective, but also if they have a disability, they can be able to see somebody that relates to them, and know what's going on, and they're not alone. So that is good. It's these children books. As I've been on this journey and talking to other authors, it's amazing to know, and just to hear the backstory, you
Mhm.
know, of how they got into it, and why they're writing their stories. So I most definitely appreciate this. And so I'm kind of reading my questions over here on the
Well, no,
side.
you okay? You're okay.
So now, besides your own book, tell me another book, your favorite children's book that you have that you love to read, that you maybe even read to your son when he was younger.
So there's a book that I got, when I was doing my field experience when I was at Albright College. I was at one of the elementary schools in Reading, and the teacher that I worked with, as a matter of fact, I just found her on Facebook, which is crazy because it's like 22 years later.
Oh, wow.
But she gave me The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, and I still have that book to this day.
Oh,
And so she gave me that when I finished my field experience with her, and I read that to my son every night. When he was younger, he probably don't remember it, but I used to read it to him all the time. And then um, that's one, and then the other one is the Dr. Seuss, The Places We Can Go. So
okay.
those two, and that one was given to my son when he came out of the NICU by one of his doctors. She actually stayed with him. Well, not out of the NICU, but he transitioned out of the NICU, and then she was his regular pediatrician, and then she was leaving to move somewhere else, and she gave him that book. So those two books are my favorite.
Okay, that's great. That is really great. And so now, when it came to you publishing your book, what made you choose the self-publishing route versus trying to go through and trying to get a literary agent and go to the traditional way, as everybody seems to think that's the better way?
To be honest, that was the only way I knew when I did the book, Women Thriving Fearlessly with Erica Gilchrist. Although she mentored us through the process, we all self-published under Amazon.
Okay.
And then I had a mentor. I was in an entrepreneur group in Philadelphia, and so one of the entrepreneur leader for the group, he was like, if you got a vision, you should start out with a book. And I was like, well, I don't have nothing to talk about. But then one of the one of the other entrepreneurs in the group, she had just did a book, and
Okay.
she was sharing her vision, and so she was actually teaching others how to do it. And I was like, oh wow! I was like, let me see, let me just try it out, see if I can, if I can do it. And so I contacted her, and she went step by step with me. And it's funny because now I get phone calls from people now to ask them, that for me to help them. And I'm like, do I know what I'm doing? They like, girl, you on book number 5. Like, you know what you do. So, but yeah, so she mentored me through the process of how to get it out of me. Because if you had asked me 3 years ago, would I have my first children's book, I would have been like, no. And to be honest with you, I wrote the book. The illustrator finished the pictures, and then I had the book like still sitting in my computer. And she called me, my mentor called me, and she was like, I don't see the book out yet. Where's that? And I was like,
Right now.
it's done. It's done. And she was like, so people need to see it. And I was like, okay. I was just scared. I was nervous. I'm like, what if people don't respond to it? What if people don't like it? And so the self-publishing thing is a little different because you got to be the promoter. You got to be the one to, get the book out, out and about. I have thought about doing at least one or two under a publishing company. I hear good and bad stories, so I'm like, I'm about to just stick to self-publishing. But I mean, I guess it's to the person and how far you want it to go and how you want it to, impact the world.
Yeah.
So the self-publishing piece, I would say I'm going to say personally for me, it's a little challenging because I'm an introvert. So for me to go out there and talk about the book and getting it out, and then working on getting it into stores and libraries, that's the part that's my weakness. Should I say, in the self-publishing world.
It's
So
more.
like social media helped, but just that main, like getting it into Barnes and Nobles or getting it into Walmart. I did have a book signing at Barnes and Noble, so we're working on. And then the pandemic happened, so we were going to work on getting it into the store. But just those different steps. Definitely, I would say if you self-publish, to have a mentor to lead you in the directions and make sure it's somebody that's already did, so you can just kind of walk in their footprints
Right.
and make sure that you're going in the right direction, and they're not taking advantage of you.
Yeah. And so what do you think was your, biggest challenge when it came to self-publishing? Do you think it, like you said, you're an introvert, so was it more so the marketing side, like putting yourself out there, or that writing process, going through it all?
I would kind of say both. Like I said, it was finished, but I let it sit in the computer for like a couple of weeks before we actually launched. But once we launched, I always have this hashtag that God is my agent, because no lie, Sabrina, like I said, we launched January 27th of 2019. I did like a little fashion show, a kids fashion show and book launch. So I had about 25, 30 people, family and friends that had purchased the book. And the funny thing was the order got backlogged, so everybody book hadn't arrived in time for the day of the event. So all I had was like the preview book. So we took pictures with the preview book, and I had everybody sign their name like they was the author. So that was my copy to keep. So it was something different.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 3 years ago we did that, and no lie, I was booked all of 2019, all the way up until June of 2020, but the pandemic happened. So my weekend schedule was booked from January of 2019 all the way to June 2020, just from this one. And when I tell you, it was just word of mouth. Like, besides social media, I don't have no commercials, no billboards, no nothing. It's all just word of mouth. And, people wanting to get the word out about autism and autism awareness and, advocating for children and advocating for parents and adults. So that's how my hashtag is God is my agent, because that was it right there. Like like I said, I was getting phone calls. People was in my inbox.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, who is this? And I'm like, I don't even know this person, but okay, if it's about the book, I'll share.
Right,
But
right.
definitely social media and my agent.
Yes, yes, God is the agent. I love that. And I mean,
Yeah.
and just think about that, where you was thinking, and I think this is a process that we all go through, that self-doubt. And you're
Mhm.
wondering whether or not if anybody's going to like it, is it important what I'm saying? And believe it or not, all of our stories are important. And you're talking
Mhm.
about from the autism perspective, it's a lot of people out here looking for those resources that, from an autism, because I had one friend who had a son who was autistic, and just that love and support of that community was everything. And so your book most definitely is touching lives for sure, and
Thank
making
you.
a difference, because again, we all have a story that we need to tell. We all gonna second guess ourselves, but we just got to toss it out there and see what happens. If it wins, great, and if it doesn't, you know what, say you accomplished it.
That's true. I received one review on Amazon um about the book, and the person was like, this book is weird. I don't know what they talking about. And so at first when I read it, I was like, oh wow. I was like, okay. I said, well, the families that have children on the spectrum, they know exactly what I'm talking about. I said, so if you read this book and didn't understand it, I hope now you understand what a child might go through when they are on the spectrum. And I just
Yeah,
left it at that. And I was like, thank you for purchasing the book. If
yeah,
if it's not for you, please hand it over to a family who may need it. And that's
yeah,
how I left it. And at first, like really, it was like a gut punch at first. I was like, oh my goodness, they ain't like it was weird. I was like, what do you mean it was weird? And I
right.
mean, if you are a person from the outside who's never experienced anybody being on the spectrum, some of the things you might be like, well, why he keep covering his ears?
Yes.
Well, why he hiding under the table all the time? Or why the teacher looking at him like that? Like just those things, you probably would think it was weird. But those experiences, definitely, those children are definitely experiencing it, and the parents is experiencing it as well as the staff. So that's why I was like, I hope, if it wasn't for you, you learned something.
Yes.
So to each is his own. But when I do give the book, I hope I provide some, the families with resources and educating them as much as possible.
Yes. Now tell the audience where to find you. Give them your website.
Okay. All right. No problem. So the website is under my business. So it's www.lmadvocateforme.com. Our Instagram is at advocate for me _ the number 2. And Facebook, you can find me under Advocate for Me, the number 2. And then also you can follow me under Levon McMillan. I try to post both things, but sometimes I do post most of the business information on the Advocate for Me page.
Okay. That is awesome. And again, having such an amazing story, and you sharing your story is so impactful, because and I said, it's so many people that's living that same life, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to reach out because they're afraid that somebody's going to look at them like they're crazy or whatever. But sometimes when we get stuck in those places, it's good to know that somebody has a resource that they can be able to utilize, and understand that you are not alone. So this is
Well, they
amazing.
definitely can reach out to Advocate for Me. That was the whole purpose of Advocate for Me, is making sure that the parents didn't know that they were alone. And I target audience are the moms, because
Yes.
we handle a lot of hats, and we tend not to ask for help. so
Yes. Yes.
so that's
Yes.
exactly why Advocate for Me was started, was to make sure that we have that group of women to encourage each other as well as the resources. But thank you so much, Sabrina, for allowing me to share it. And it's our anniversary.
Happy book anniversary. And do you have any final words for the people?
So if you want to write a book, I would definitely say, because I turned Erica down 3 times before I did that collaboration book. There's a story in you. I know it sounds cliche that everybody says that, but there's definitely a story in you, and God has you going along that journey, even if you think it's like the worst thing that you have ever experienced in your life. That journey may help the next person. Like Sabrina said, somebody else might be sitting at home thinking that they're, all alone in that journey that they're going through, where you've already overcame the journey and now you're able to tell your story. So definitely tell your story. Um, don't think that the process of writing is hard. Like I said, for me, it's just like journaling. So I'm just getting it out on paper, and then I let somebody else deal with the grammar and stuff. The editor deal with the grammar and stuff. I just get it on the paper, and like we shared earlier, just to get our story out there, just to help somebody else. And that's the thing that drives me to write more, is to help the next person. So don't let it stop you. Keep moving.
Show them your book cover again. Yes. What about me? Yes. And a lot of us ask that question. What about me? So guys, make sure that you head on over to Miss Miss Yvonne's page and check her out. Make sure that you support what she's doing. Another amazing African-American author who's out here spreading the word, a positive message that's going to have a powerful impact on families across the United States, around the world. We need more of these stories. So, Ms. Yvonne, I greatly appreciate you joining me tonight. It's been an amazing conversation, and I look forward to seeing all the rest of your books that you have in the pipe, because I know you're going to have some amazing stories that's going to continue to just work miracles and speak volumes over families, students, teachers that's needed. So again, I greatly appreciate you joining me this evening. Thank you guys again for joining me for another episode of Ink and Chat. You have a lovely evening, and I will talk to you again soon.